My name is Joshua Smith. I am the founding pastor of House of Healing Christian Assembly in Gulfport, Mississippi. I've been in ministry for quite a while now, over 15 years. I'm also a board certified mental health therapist. Yesterday I celebrated 9 years in the mental health field. Yes, thank you. So God be the glory. And so this morning I have been charged, or this afternoon I've been charged with talking about the mind of a man. The mind of a man. How many ready to receive what I have to give you? The mind of a man. The subtopic, and I don't endeavor to be before you long. I know we say that in church. I'm preaching. So I won't be before you long. But my subtopic is going to be the emotionally healthy man. The emotionally healthy man. I want a little audience participation as I move forward. I want to ask you, the audience, the men that have gathered here, the brothers that have gathered here, what makes a man? What makes a man a man? Anybody? It's not a trick question. God, okay.
Taking on responsibilities.
Responsibilities? I heard you mumble something.
I was knowing his purpose in God.
Knowing his purpose in God, I like that one. One more. What makes a man a man?
You said knowing his purpose in God. He said responsibility. And just for participation, I'm going to say strength.
Strength. Okay, I like those. As men, we define ourselves by a lot of different things, especially as it relates to society. Now, you all gave me very kingdom answers, and so I really appreciate that. But there are a lot of things that we define ourselves as men, even men in the church. So notice I used words church and kingdom. I don't have time to teach on that. But there are a lot of things that we define ourselves by as men. Our money and how much we can make. Okay, let's just get real. Our women and how many we have. And how good we are in bed. Come on, let's just be real. Our looks and our clothes, our education and our jobs, our ability to provide. Somebody say responsibilities. Okay? But when you strip all of that away, what you have is a man who is made in the image and after the likeness of God. Man is a spirit, watch this, who lives in a body and possesses a soul.
That's right.
You with me? Man, we are a spirit. We live in a body, this shell, this tent, and we possess a soul. So we are 3 parts. We are triune. We are body, soul, and spirit. Again, we are a spirit. We live in a body and we possess a soul. The soul is the core of who we are. It is the foundation of who we are. The apostle said in 3 John, he said, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as what? Thy soul should prosper. So the soul is the foundation of who we are. If your soul is off balance, if your soul is not right, then every other part of you isn't going to be right. Does that make sense? So even as, get a picture of scales in your mind, even as your soul prospers. So everything hinges off of the success of your soul. So what is the soul? If you strip away everything that we talked about, everything that I just mentioned, all of those things that we define ourselves as on the outside, that's external. That's physical, right? That's body stuff. That's things that people can see. But if you strip all of that away, what's left? The soul. So what is the soul? The soul is the mind, the will, the emotions, the appetite. What do you desire? It's your heart. It's your character. When you look at the word heart in the Old Testament, it's interchangeable with the soul. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So your life is going to follow the trajectory of your thoughts.
Come on.
Whatever you're thinking on is where your life is going to go.
That's right. Yeah.
Does this make sense?
Yeah.
So your emotions, it is the emotions of a man. It's the mind of the man. It's the will of the man. What got them in trouble in the garden was not their spirit.
Come on.
It was their soul, because they saw, well, Eve saw it first and then she shared it with her husband, but they saw that the tree, the fruit on the tree was good. It was pleasant for eating, and their appetite Their soul made them disobey God because they saw something that looked good, but God said it wasn't. Does that make sense? So how do we get into sin? We see something that looks good,
Come on. Yeah, you preach.
but God says you can't have it, don't touch it. But our soul, I desire, I will. Jesus said in the garden, he was a man, he said, not my
Will.
but thy will be done. So God has a will, and guess what? We have one too.
Yes.
All right, does this make sense?
Come on.
So if you strip away all of those things that we talked about, all those things that we use to define ourselves, to categorize ourselves, to say this is what makes me a man, what you have left is our soul. So how is your soul? Is your soul healthy? We're talking about the mind of a man. Are your emotions healthy? Let me give you the definition of emotional health. Emotional health. Emotional health, or being emotionally healthy, we know what being physically healthy is, right? Right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Y'all making me nervous. We know what physical health is. Even if you're not, you know what it is. All right. So emotional health is what we don't often talk about. Emotional health, watch this, is the ability to control and master your emotions.
Yes.
Bible says in Proverbs, a man that can't control his own spirit is like a city whose walls have been torn down.
Come on, preach. Amen.
Walls of boundaries. If you don't have walls, anything can come in, anything can go out.
All right.
So people that can't control their emotions, they have no boundaries. They're not emotionally healthy. So it's your ability to control and be aware of your own emotions. It is also your ability to be aware of the emotions of people around you.
Come on.
Does this make sense?
Yeah. Good.
So that's called empathy.
Yes.
It's being able to know the emotions of those that are around you and to act accordingly. Does this make sense?
Amen. Good.
So that's emotional health. Or we also call it emotional intelligence, EQ. So many people know their IQ, but do you know your EQ?
Wow.
Also in EQ, emotional intelligence quotient, or emotional health, is your ability to handle stressful situations. So what do you do under stress?
Come on, Jesus.
Do you go into the man cave and stay there? We'll talk about that later. Just a little play on words there. But that's emotional health. It's your ability to control and master your emotions, to know what's going on the inside of you and act accordingly, to know the emotions of those that are around you, all right? You cannot be, watch this, you cannot be successful anywhere else if your soul, which is your emotions, your mind is unbalanced. It won't happen. So you can't be successful in your career. Think about those, and you can probably call off about 4 or 5 celebrities. Just use those because they're easy targets, right? And let's kind of take the pressure off ourselves. Think about someone that's very successful that cannot control their emotions, cannot control their mind, their thoughts, because thoughts lead to feelings and feelings lead to behavior. Because as a man thinketh, so is he. And the Amplified Bible adds in behavior. So as you think in your heart, your soul, so are you, and then your behavior is going to reflect the way you think.
Come on. That's good. That's true.
Mm-hmm. So think about somebody that you know, somebody that's in lights, that's in the spotlight, that they have everything, it seems like, but they're always in the news. They can't control themselves. They're always in jail, or something is happening to them. Is soul. Jesus said, in patience, possess ye your soul. So we have to possess our emotions. We have to possess our mind. So we cannot be successful anywhere else in any other dimension, even spiritually, naturally, if our soul is unbalanced. So I'm going to talk to you in the remainder of my time about how to be emotionally healthy. And I'm going to use David as a theological backdrop. Are you ready?
Come on.
Are you ready? All right, so I'm going to give you 4 signs of an emotionally healthy man. How many want to be emotionally healthy?
Amen.
Not just spiritually healthy, not just physically healthy, but emotionally healthy, because that's balance. Body, soul, and spirit. Because again, if one part of you is messed up, then the whole thing is messed up. So we want to be balanced, body, soul, and spirit, so we can be whole, healed men. Amen? So, 4 signs of an emotionally healthy man. My foundation text is 1 Samuel 30. Very familiar. I'm not going to read all of it, but 1 Samuel 30 is talking about David and his men in Ziklag. Now, we know that Ziklag is the place that the Philistine or the Philistine king gave to David as his city, as his place. These are the same men, let me just give you some history. These are the same men that came to David in the cave.
Come on here.
How many remember the cave of Adullam? They came to him in the cave of Adullam. It was about 400 men. The Bible says in about, I think, chapter 21 or 22, somewhere in there, that these 400 men came to David. They were in distress. They were discontented. And in the Hebrew, that means bitter in soul. So they had emotional problems when they came to David. They were broke too.
Yes.
So they had money problems. They had emotional health problems. They were just messed up. But the Bible says, when we read about them again, that they were men of war. They were valiant men. They were men of valor. It says that they were able to handle both the spear and the sword. They could fight with their left hand and their right hand.
Wow.
So, David not only saved their life, he not only gave them a place of refuge, because that's what Adullam means. He gave them refuge. He not only saved them, but he gave them a transformation experience. So by the time we read about them again, they are strong men. They are mighty men. They are men of war. So, 1 Samuel 30, we see them again. They're not in the cave anymore. They're settled in a place called Ziklag. They have left to go and fight. They came back, and we know the story. They came back and they found the city burned down. Not only burned down, but their wives and their children have been taken away. Let's go to verse 3. I'm going to read it. You don't have to turn necessarily. 1 Samuel 30, and I'm going to give you the first sign of an emotionally healthy man. 1 Samuel 30, verse 3 and 4. So David and his men came to the city, and behold, it was burned with fire, and their wives and their sons and their daughters were taken captives. Then David, verse 4, and the people that were with him lifted up their voices and wept until they had no more power to weep. Let's stop here. The first sign of an emotionally healthy man, brace yourself, is that they are not afraid to express emotion.
Come on. Come on here. Amen.
Can we take a few deep breaths on that?
Come on.
First sign, an emotionally healthy man is not afraid to express emotion. We just read it. David and his men wept until they had no more power to weep. They were out of tears and out of strength to weep. That's how much they cried. They were strong men. David was always a man of war. The backside of the wilderness, he took care of sheep. He wrestled lions and bears. David was not a weak man. So showing emotions, or what they used to call being in touch with your emotions, does not make you a weak man.
That's right.
Amen, somebody.
Amen.
When we don't express emotions, or we're not able to communicate emotions, this is a thing that we call in psychology suppression. Everybody say suppression. Suppression is the pushing down of painful emotions. And I won't just say painful emotions for the sake of this presentation. I will just say emotions, period. Suppression. What happens with suppression, the danger of suppression, is you push emotions down so much that they start manifesting in other ways. So many men have health problems, not because necessarily anything is wrong, but because they haven't been expressing their emotions. They haven't been talking. They haven't been communicating. And there's so much going on in their head. Come on. There's so much going on in their mind, so much on their heart, their soul, and they've kept it in. They bottled it in. And we've been taught that that's manly not to express emotions or to act like we don't have them.
Come on, preacher.
Am I setting you free a little bit? You feel a little bit free? Okay. The numbers, let me just take this as a sidebar. The numbers for of course I'm a therapist, the numbers for depression, and I can't call it right off, the numbers for depression are lower for men than they are for women. And people always go on that tangent, oh, well, women have higher percentages of depression than men. But what I have discovered, and I'm not, of course, the only professional that has discovered this, but what I have discovered dealing with people face to face is that it's not that the percentages are lower because they're lower. They are lower because men typically don't admit that they are depressed. Because on the opposite end of that, men are more likely to commit suicide than women. Why is that? Because men will use more lethal means than a woman. What does that mean? So a woman, typically, these are generalizations, a woman typically may, take pills or, try to drown herself or do things like that. But a man, if he wants to kill himself, don't get no ideas. We bind that in Jesus' name. But a man, if he's depressed and wants to kill himself, will just go get a gun and do it. And most of the time, the people around him never knew.
Amen.
That's right.
Does that make sense?
Right.
So the depression numbers, percentages are low, but the suicide numbers,
All right.
see the correlation? So what we really have is men not talking about their emotions. That's the problem.
Yes, sir.
So we have to really look at those stats.
Amen.
And then for men often they express depression in different ways. So you have to be very wise when you are especially counseling men, because men often show depression in the form of anger.
Come on. Yes, sir.
Because that's how we've been cultured to show any type of feeling. It always comes back, any negative feeling comes back to anger.
Yes. Come on.
Again, that's a generalization, but it's a very wide generalization.
Come on.
Let me tell you something about anger. Anger is what we call a secondary emotion. Let me break that down for you. Secondary emotion just means it wasn't the first emotion.
Come on. Wow. Come on.
Secondary means it was a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
The first emotion was generally hurt.
Yeah. Come on, man.
Y'all got that?
Come on. We got it.
So I'm hurting, but I can't tell you I'm hurting. So it has to manifest as anger.
Wow. Come on.
But a counselor, a good one, is going to get to the root and say, what's at the root of all this anger I'm seeing?
Come on, man.
They're going to ask the right questions. Say, what's really going? Why are you so angry? And generally, it's hurt. So anger is a secondary emotion. You're not really angry. You're hurt.
Come on.
Selah. So yes, men typically process and express emotions differently. Generally, we tend to shut down. That's the way we've been cultured. But we have to find a way to express emotions. There's also a thing, and I'm going to move on from this point. There's also a thing called toxic masculinity. Has anybody ever heard of that? Toxic masculinity. This can manifest in many different ways, but from a psychological standpoint, it is just what I've been talking about. The fear of expressing emotions. Not wanting to express emotions, because again, we've been cultured that men don't cry.
Right.
Men don't talk. Somebody was talking to God in the garden before Eve got there.
Come on.
God wasn't talking to himself.
That's right.
Think about it. So men were born and made to talk.
Right.
So where did we get that from? Anyway. So toxic masculinity just says that we have been cultured not to express and show emotions. Now all of the other drama to the side about this particular person. Look at Tyrese and all the backlash that he got initially for coming on social media, and all my feelings about social media to the side and about that. Look at all of the backlash he got for being a man coming on social media and expressing emotions in that way, crying.
Right.
talking about his child for all things.
Right.
And how much we talk about fatherhood in the black community.
Come on.
Think about the double standard.
Come on.
Yeah, you preach.
But because he wasn't on their sober-minded, quote unquote, he was crying, the backlash, part of it, came. So just think about that as it relates to toxic masculinity. Think about how many have daughters. Okay? How many of you that raised your hand have sons? Okay, good percentage. So if your daughter is riding down the street on her bike and she falls and she starts crying, what do you do? Okay? Comfort. If your son falls,
Same supposed to be tough.
I just want to do the percentages. Okay? Okay. Okay.
Girls cry.
About 50-50. About 50-50. But generally, it's girls running comfort. Boys, get up, stop crying, you ain't hurt. Suck it up, man up. That's generally the way we are programmed. Now, society is evolving in such a way that there's an imbalance. I'm not here to talk about that today. However, generally, we tell the boys, get up, don't cry. That's where that starts. Right? Just something to think about.
Come on.
So, emotionally healthy men are not afraid to express emotions. Emotionally healthy men, too, know how to deal with the emotions of others. Remember I said earlier that part of the definition of emotional health is your ability to be aware of other people's emotions around you. Let's read verse 6. It says, and David was greatly distressed, for the people spake of stoning him. Now these are the same men that he trained. Remember back to this cave? These are the same men that he trained. The same men that he literally saved their lives. And now they're talking about stoning him because they're in trouble. Pressure will do that to people. It'll make them turn on you.
Come on.
You knew that, right? Okay. So they spake of stoning him because the soul of all the people was grieved. Every man for his sons and for his daughters. But guess what? David lost sons and daughters too. So he was in the same mess they were. But every man was grieved for his sons and daughters. But David encouraged himself in the Lord. So what I want to pull out of this for this point, emotionally healthy men know how to deal with the emotions of others. David had relationship with these men, but he didn't let these men and their situation, what they were going through, and even their talk of stoning him, pull him into a bad place where he was about to act out of character with them. Does that make sense? We don't see it recorded that David started an argument, that he started a fist fight with anybody. Because, oh, you go stone me? Well, let's take it to the street. No. The Bible says in the end of the verse that he encouraged himself in the Lord. That had to have meant that he got somewhere by himself, even though the same men that he had been with all this time were talking about stoning him. So he didn't let their emotions determine his emotions. That's the takeaway. That's an emotionally healthy man. He pulled himself away and was able to encourage himself. That word means that he strengthened himself in the Lord because he realized that his help did not come from the men. His help came from the Lord. So emotionally healthy men, they don't get pulled into other people's emotional storms. Does that make sense? So that's number 2. Emotionally healthy men know how to deal with the emotions of other people. Number 3, emotionally healthy men know how to pray.
Come on.
Where did I get this one from? 7th verse, very next verse. It said, this is after he encouraged himself, strengthened himself in the Lord. They're still talking about stoning him. Verse 7. It says, and David said to Abiathar the priest, Abimelech's son, I pray thee, bring me the ephod, the prayer garment. And Abiathar brought hither the ephod to David. Emotionally healthy men. I know that I said that we have three different parts, body, soul, and spirit, but those three parts must work together.
Okay.
So your spirit and your soul is supposed to be working together. Does that make sense?
Amen.
You must maintain a spiritual connection. Some kind of connection to a power higher and greater than you, and we know that is Jesus. Everybody here saved, right?
Yeah.
Jesus. When we go to God, He gives us instructions and He gives us strategies. Somebody say instructions and strategies. Say it again, instructions and strategies. When David went to God, he went to his spiritual connection, even though he was emotional. Come on, he just got done crying.
Yeah.
You with me?
Come on.
But he went to God anyway. You can't be so stuck in your emotions
All right.
that you don't maintain your spiritual connection.
That's it.
So stuck in what you're going through that do not maintain your spiritual connection. So emotionally healthy men know how to pray because we understand that once we go to God in prayer, He's going to give us instructions. He is going to give us strategies, because you know the story. When he went to God and he began to pray, he asked God, shall I pursue?
Yeah.
And God said to him, what? Pursue, and without fail, you will recover all. Not just some of it, you're going to recover all. But had he not prayed, had he stayed in his emotions, stayed in his feelings, I have a saying that said you can either be in faith or be in your feelings.
Come on.
Come on, preacher. All right.
Can I do that again? You can be in faith or you can be in your feelings. Can't stay in your emotions too long. You have to balance with body, soul, and spirit.
Yes.
So he got instructions and strategies. So let me give you this as well, and I'm sure you've heard this in some way. Women don't mind submitting to a man with a plan, and a man who's submitted to God. Can I get an amen in the corner? Step up. And the way you step up is to pray. Because you can't step up without a plan. And the way you get a plan is to pray.
All right.
That's right. That's right.
Did y'all catch that?
Yes.
You got to step up. But you have to step up with a plan. And the way you get a plan, the way you get a strategy is to pray. Once he prayed, he got the strategy. We were made men. We were born, created to be leaders. We were born and created to be leaders. Leaders with a plan. Leaders in prayer. Many times when you go, and take this side street and I'm coming back. Many times when you go to our churches, predominantly those that are working in the prayer ministry are the women. But who needs to be on the front line? And I know in Jesus, you don't have to give me, I have a degree in theology. You don't have to give me the male or female scripture. But who needs to be on the front line of prayer is the men. The men of war. Come on.
Yes,
The men of valor.
Come on, preacher.
The men who need to say it's time to recover all. Because when David prayed, he got his release to recover all. How many men are in here today and you're saying you are feeling like it's time to recover some things? How many? I didn't see your hand. It's time to recover some things. It's time to reclaim some things. And I'm not talking about material stuff. I'm talking about reclaiming your time, reclaiming your family. Come on, reclaiming your children, your mind, your ministry, your self-worth, your position. Somebody confess, it's my time to recover. Come on, say it again with some power. It's my time to recover. Come on, say it again. It's my time to recover. One more time. It's my time to recover. All right, I'm going to give you my fourth and final point. Here it is. No matter, we're talking about the emotionally healthy man. No matter what they've lost, emotionally healthy men always find the strength to bounce back better than they were before. I'll give you that one more time. No matter what they lost, and we see that David has lost a lot here. And we've gone with him down this emotional trail. They're talking about stoning him. He's lost some things. He's cried with them. But no matter what they have lost, emotionally healthy men always, somebody say always, always find the strength to bounce back better. Somebody say better. Say it again, better. Say it one more time, better than they were before. Let me give you some text for this. Verse 18. It says, and David recovered all that the Amalekites had carried away. And David rescued his wives. And there was nothing lacking, neither great nor small, neither sons nor daughters, neither spoil nor anything that had been taken to them. David recovered all. And David took all the flocks, the herd, which they drove before those other cattle, and said, this is David's spoil. So he eventually recovered all.
Yes.
Emotionally healthy men always find the strength to bounce back. This is what we call resilience. Everybody say resilience.
Resilience.
We see, again, that David was in a very emotional and broken place. He was distraught. But, watch this, he dealt with his mind and his emotions. Remember, he got with himself. He encouraged himself. He strengthened himself. Don't miss the process. You have to go through the process before you recover.
That's right.
I said you have to go through the process
Yes.
before you recover. You don't just jump into recovery. You got to go through this emotional process. You got to pray. There are steps. Then you get to the recovery. So he dealt with his mind. He dealt with his emotions. He expressed them. And then he dealt with them through processing. Processing just simply means talking. Let's make it real simple. And we don't like to do that. We talked about that earlier. Sometimes you got to talk some stuff out.
That's it, dog.
I said sometimes you got to talk some stuff out.
Yes, sir.
You got to deal with some stuff that you've been suppressing. Remember those health problems?
There you go. Come on, Pastor.
Sometimes we talk about women talk too much, but sometimes they outlive us. Because they going to just get it out.
Get it out. Get it out.
And I found even in myself that I'm an introvert. Y'all may not believe that. But I'm an introvert, so I do processing very slowly. Don't mean I'm slow. I just process slowly because I have to gather my thoughts and feel my environment and do all of that process internally. But after I do that, I get some time. Now it's time for me to express.
Yeah, come on.
Because I can't keep all that in. That's suppression.
Yeah.
That's not healthy for my mind.
Yeah.
That's not healthy for my body. That's toxic, actually, for me. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So you have to deal with your emotions through processing, through talking. After he did that, he gained resilience. Resilience is defined as the power and the ability to bounce back after hard times. One more time. It is the power and the ability to bounce back after hard times. This is psychological and emotional strength. This is being mentally tough, mentally strong. This is not something that you are necessarily born with. So you don't have to be from a certain family to have resilience. Google that word. It's an actual psychological term. So it's not something that you're necessarily born with. You don't have to be born in the right town or born to the right family. Anybody can develop resilience. It's a skill set. But it's your ability to bounce back after you've been through some emotional and traumatic situations. But the only way you develop resilience is by walking through some things, by processing some emotions. Through prayer, come on, we get the spiritual connection now. Through prayer, come on, through faith, you gain the strength to make a comeback. Somebody make that confession to me. Say, I'm making a comeback.
I'm making a comeback.
Say it again, I'm making a comeback.
I'm making a
One
comeback.
more time, I'm about to make a comeback.
I'm about to make a comeback.
Come on, preacher.
Last thing, this is the bonus. Emotional health for men. What does this look like practically? Let me give you something else. What does it look like practically when you're in the middle of the struggle? You're in the middle of a traumatic situation. You're in the middle of a transition. What does that look like? Because you can have all these points, and still be in the middle of something, and you're not catching any of the points because you're in the middle.
All right.
That makes sense?
Oh, yeah.
One word: accountability.
You ready?
You there, preacher.
Somebody say accountability.
Accountability.
Say it one more time: accountability.
Accountability.
These men, and I don't have time to go through all of the text, but these men needed David to be successful. They needed David to win. They needed David to make a comeback. They needed a leader because they were too emotional. They were too distraught.
That's right.
They didn't know to go to ask for the ephod.
Okay, come on.
Come on now.
You with me?
Yes, sir.
Because while David was strengthening himself, encouraging himself, they were still having a meeting about stoning him.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
While David was praying, they were still crying.
All right.
While David was getting instructions, strategies, they were still crying and weeping. But David came out of prayer and said, okay, let's go do this.
Yeah.
They didn't know where they were going. They didn't know what the plan was. But they were following the leadership. So let's just add that in there: leadership and accountability. Because you can't be in authority unless you're under it.
Wow.
Great job.
Wow. My. Yes, sir.
Accountability, leadership. They needed the leader. Even though they wanted to kill him, they still needed him. And so that's why leaders can't get involved with petty stuff and stuff at the bottom, because those people still gonna need you at the end of the day.
That's good. That's good. That's it. Yes, sir.
So you gotta stay on the mountain while they're in the valley.
All right. All right. Come on now.
That was just a leadership tip for free. Find, this is accountability. Find a man to connect with that will challenge your mind, that will stretch you, and that will strengthen you.
My.
Now, caught that? That will stretch you, and that will strengthen you. And a man that will pull out your potential. Men need men.
Yeah.
Come on. That's it.
Men need men. Sons need fathers,
Come on.
naturally and spiritually. Men need a sounding board, someone that they can talk to.
Come on.
That's accountability. Men need the man cave.
Come on.
My.
This man cave should produce after its own kind. Because it's in the first year, anything in the first year is a seed.
All right.
And a seed should always be produced.
Yeah.
So we should go, put myself in there, away from here, saying, how can we populate and reproduce this thing so no man can be left behind?
All right. Come on. Yeah. Yes.
Because even when, this is not in my notes, even when David was going to fight the Amalekites, he went straight into the camp. When he took men into the camp, there were about 600 men. So that's another point. These 400 men reproduced and turned into 600 men.
All right.
Multiplication, expansion. When they were on the way to the Amalekite camp, the Bible said, I think that about 200 men got weak, fell behind, couldn't go. So he said to them, you stay here by the brook. The other 400, we going in. When they came back, some of the men that were with him were like, we're not giving them anything. We're not giving them the spoils. No, David being a leader, he said, no, they still get some of the inheritance. Come on, they still get some of the spoil because it belongs to them too.
All right. Yes, sir.
What am I saying? No man should be left out. No man should be left behind. This thing should populate. It's called accountability. It's called brotherhood. Somebody say amen.
Amen.
Because men need men.
Yes. Yes.
Men need accountability.
Yes.
Men need character development. Because part of the soul, in the seat of the soul is the personality, which is also a derivative of character.
Come on.
If you're weak in character, you need someone to help you strengthen your character.
That's right. Yes, sir.
That's where accountability
That's
comes
right.
from.
That's right.
That's a soul issue. Because sometimes we get stuff and we can't keep it.
All right. Rachel. Come on.
Okay.
Wow. Appreciate that.
Every man needs accountability, a sounding board, someone they can connect to the challenge and stretch them. I have a saying that says mentors or mistakes.
Wow.
That's good.
We can have one or the other.
And preach. Wow.
Mentors or mistakes. So let's review the four, and I'm going to pray for you really quickly and we'll be done. 4 signs of an emotionally healthy man, using David. Number 1, they're not afraid to express emotion. 2, emotionally healthy men know how to deal with the emotions of others. 3, emotionally healthy men know how to pray.
Pray.
4, no matter what they've lost,
Gotta know how to bounce back.
emotionally healthy men always find the strength,
Yeah.
the resilience, the mental toughness
Yes.
to bounce back
Yes, Lord.
better.
Yes.
That's the key.
Yes, sir.
Better than they were before. Somebody declare, I'm emotionally healthy. I'm whole.
I'm whole.
And I'm free.
And I'm free.
It's time for me
It's time for me
to make a comeback.
to make a comeback.